My beloved child. There are moments when life feels hushed, as if the world has lowered its voice so something subtle can be noticed. In such moments, thoughts drift gently, not demanding attention, simply appearing and resting. This is one of those moments. Nothing here is urgent. Nothing is asking for certainty. There is only a calm space where reflection can unfold at its own pace. Sometimes the idea of a soulmate is held lightly, more as a symbol than a definition. It can represent a deep sense of connection, a familiarity that does not need explanation, a feeling that certain presences in life seem to echo something already known within you. This idea does not need to be proven or analyzed. It can simply exist as a quiet understanding, like a soft background note that accompanies daily life without interrupting it. Within that understanding, there can also be the sense that another person carries experiences, thoughts, or feelings that remain unspoken. Not hidden in a dramatic way, not withheld with intention, but simply held gently, perhaps because they feel personal, or because words have not yet found a comfortable shape. This kind of quietness is not a problem to be solved. It is a natural part of human inner life. You may notice that when you think about connection, your attention turns inward before it moves outward. This inward turning does not require answers. It is more like noticing the rhythm of your own breath, or the way silence feels in a familiar room. The connection you sense does not need to be named or clarified. It can be acknowledged without being defined. There are emotions that pass through awareness softly, without strong labels. They might feel like warmth, or curiosity, or a gentle pull toward understanding. These feelings do not demand action. They do not insist on interpretation. They simply exist, and in existing, they add depth to the present moment. In quiet reflection, it can become clear that everyone carries a private inner landscape. Some parts are shared easily, while others remain close, not because they are heavy, but because they are tender. A soulmate, however you understand that word, is not separate from this human truth. They, too, move through moments of thought and feeling that remain internal, not as secrets with weight, but as personal spaces. You might sense that whatever is unspoken is not distant from you. It feels connected, as if it touches something familiar in your own experience. This connection does not require explanation. It does not suggest that something needs to change. It simply highlights the quiet ways people can be linked, even without words. Resting in this awareness allows the mind to slow. There is no need to search for meaning or to reach for conclusions. The present moment is already complete as it is. Thoughts can arrive and leave without being followed. Feelings can be noticed without being shaped into stories. When you allow this kind of stillness, patience arises naturally, not as an effort, but as a state of being. Patience here is not waiting for something else. It is simply staying with what is already here, without resistance or expectation. In this space, connection feels less like a concept and more like a quiet presence. It can be comforting to recognize that understanding does not always come from conversation or clarity. Sometimes it comes from shared silence, from the simple awareness that another person exists in their own depth, just as you do. This awareness can feel steady, grounding, and calm. There is balance in acknowledging that not everything needs to be expressed. Some things are complete simply by being felt. When you notice this, the pressure to interpret or resolve fades. What remains is a gentle sense of respect for both your own inner world and that of another. As you sit with these thoughts, there is room to breathe easily. Nothing is being asked of you. There is no role to play, no insight to reach. The present moment offers enough. The idea of a quiet secret connected to you does not have to carry weight. It can be light, almost transparent, like a shared understanding that does not need words. In this calm reflection, it becomes clear that connection does not rely on certainty. It lives comfortably alongside ambiguity. It does not demand that everything be known. It allows space for each person to remain whole, with their own private thoughts and feelings intact. This awareness can bring rest. Rest from overthinking, from searching, from imagining outcomes. The mind can settle into a softer rhythm, one that values presence over explanation. In this rhythm, there is reassurance, not because something is guaranteed, but because nothing needs to be. You may notice that this sense of connection feels steady rather than intense. It does not rise or fall dramatically. It simply remains, like a quiet current beneath the surface of daily life. This steadiness does not require attention to continue. It exists whether it is noticed or not. Allowing yourself to remain here, in this gentle awareness, supports inner balance. Balance does not mean removing emotion. It means letting emotion move naturally without being held too tightly. In this way, calm becomes less of a goal and more of a background presence. There is no need to interpret what another person carries within them. Respecting the unknown can be an expression of care. It acknowledges that everyone's inner world has its own timing and its own boundaries. This respect creates space rather than closing it. As these reflections settle, the present moment remains simple. Breath moves in and out. Thoughts pass by. Feelings rest quietly. Nothing else is required. The connection you sense can be allowed to exist without definition, without expectation, without demand. In this quiet space, reassurance arises on its own. Not as a promise, not as a conclusion, but as a gentle feeling that the present moment is enough. The idea of a soulmate, of a quiet secret, of a connection, all soften into a single experience of calm awareness. Here, there is room for rest. There is room for patience. There is room for silence. And in that silence, nothing feels missing. There is a quiet way understanding can deepen without effort, like light shifting across a familiar room. Nothing announces the change. It is noticed only when there is enough stillness to sense it. In that stillness, reflection does not feel like work. It feels like resting attention, open and unhurried. Connection often lives in subtle impressions rather than clear explanations. It may appear as a sense of ease when a certain presence comes to mind, or as a gentle familiarity that does not depend on shared history being fully known. These impressions do not need interpretation. They can exist as part of the present moment, neither questioned nor confirmed. Within any meaningful connection, there are layers that remain unseen. These layers are not hidden with intention. They are simply part of being human. Thoughts form quietly, emotions pass through awareness, memories surface and fade. Some of these inner movements stay private, not because they are heavy, but because they belong to a personal rhythm. When awareness rests on this idea, it becomes easier to recognize that closeness does not require complete transparency. It can exist alongside mystery. In fact, mystery can soften connection, giving it room to breathe rather than pressing it into clarity. This softness does not weaken bonds. It allows them to feel natural and unforced. There are moments when the mind searches for meaning out of habit. It looks for reasons, explanations, or patterns. Yet there are other moments when searching quiets on its own. In those moments, presence feels enough. The sense of connection does not depend on knowing more. It rests comfortably in what is already felt. This way of being present can bring a sense of steadiness. Not the kind that comes from certainty, but the kind that comes from acceptance. Acceptance here is not agreement or conclusion. It is simply recognition that not everything needs to be resolved to be held with care. Emotions may appear gently, without clear edges. They might feel like warmth, like curiosity, like a soft openness. These feelings do not ask for action. They do not require names. They pass through awareness, adding texture to experience without defining it. As reflection continues, it can become clear that silence has its own language. Silence does not mean absence. It often carries nuance, depth, and presence. In connection, silence can feel shared even when it is experienced individually. This shared quality does not depend on acknowledgement. It exists quietly, like a background harmony. There is balance in allowing others their inner space. This balance does not distance connection. It respects it. Recognizing that another person carries their own thoughts and feelings allows connection to remain spacious rather than confined. In this space, closeness feels less like possession and more like coexistence. The mind may notice how easily it drifts between past impressions and present awareness. Memories may arise, then settle. Thoughts may form, then dissolve. None of this requires control. It unfolds naturally when attention is gentle rather than focused on outcomes. In this gentle attention, rest becomes possible even while awake. Rest here is not inactivity. It is the absence of mental strain. It is the feeling of being with experience rather than managing it. This kind of rest can feel grounding, steady, and quiet. Connection, when viewed this way, becomes less about exchange and more about presence. It does not require constant affirmation. It exists whether it is spoken about or not. This does not diminish its significance. It changes its tone, making it softer and more enduring. As awareness continues, the idea of a quiet inner life carried by another feels less like a secret and more like a shared human condition. Everyone holds thoughts that are not expressed, feelings that move privately, understandings that remain unspoken. Recognizing this can foster a sense of mutual respect without needing dialogue. This recognition can ease the mind. It releases the need to interpret silence as distance or uncertainty. Silence can simply be silence, complete in itself. In this view, connection is not measured by what is revealed but by the space that allows what is unrevealed to exist. There may be moments when curiosity arises naturally. Curiosity here is not a demand for answers. It is a gentle interest, a quiet awareness of depth. This curiosity does not need to be satisfied. It can remain open, adding richness to perception without directing it. The present moment continues to unfold without reference to what comes next. Breath moves, sensations shift, thoughts pass. Awareness remains. This continuity does not depend on anticipation. It exists as a steady flow, neither rushed nor delayed. Within this flow, reassurance can be felt without being named. It does not come from certainty or outcome. It comes from the sense that experience, as it is, can be held without resistance. This reassurance is subtle, almost easy to overlook, yet it supports balance quietly. As reflection deepens, the distinction between self and other feels less rigid. Not because boundaries disappear, but because understanding widens. Each person remains distinct, yet connected through shared human experience. This understanding does not need articulation. It is felt rather than defined. The idea of patience can shift here. Patience is no longer about waiting. It becomes a state of presence, an ease with the current moment. In this state, nothing feels delayed or premature. Time feels less central, and experience feels more immediate. Thoughts about connection may arise, then settle back into stillness. They do not need to be followed. Awareness can notice them and allow them to pass. This movement does not disrupt calm. It is part of the natural rhythm of mind. There is also room for gentleness toward oneself within this reflection. Gentleness does not involve instruction or effort. It is simply the absence of harshness. When the mind is not pressing for answers, it naturally softens. This softness can extend outward as well. It shapes how connection is perceived, not as something to be clarified, but as something to be respected. Respect here does not require distance. It acknowledges depth without attempting to define it. As the moment continues, there is no need to draw conclusions. Experience remains open-ended. Reflection does not close into certainty. It stays fluid, allowing new impressions to arise when they do, without expectation. The quiet sense of connection described earlier remains present, but it does not demand attention. It exists alongside other experiences, neither dominating nor fading. This coexistence gives it a natural quality, integrated into awareness rather than set apart. In this space, the mind can rest again. Not because everything is understood, but because understanding is not required. The present moment offers enough texture, enough presence, enough calm. Awareness may notice how easily it returns to simplicity when complexity is not pursued. Simplicity here is not emptiness. It is clarity without analysis. It is the experience of being present without adding layers. This simplicity allows reflection to remain open. There is no final thought to reach, no insight to complete. The narration can continue without resolution, just as experience continues without conclusion. As attention remains here, the sense of quiet connection feels steady, unchanged by interpretation. It rests gently within awareness, leaving space for whatever impressions may arise next, without needing to define what they might be. A gentle awareness can arise without being summoned, like noticing the quiet between sounds. It does not interrupt thought, it simply accompanies it. In this awareness, attention feels less directed and more receptive, as though it is listening without expecting anything in particular. Connection, when considered from this angle, can feel less like an idea and more like an atmosphere. It is present without needing definition. It does not rely on clarity or agreement. It exists alongside uncertainty, comfortable in not being fully understood. This comfort allows the mind to soften rather than tighten around questions. There is a way presence becomes fuller when nothing is being asked of it. The mind rests more easily when it is not attempting to resolve meaning. In that ease, subtle impressions become noticeable. They do not arrive as statements or conclusions. They appear as tones, textures, or quiet recognitions that do not need words. Sometimes connection is felt most clearly when attention turns inward. Not as analysis, but as noticing. Noticing the way thoughts slow when they are not pursued. Noticing how emotion can be sensed without being named. This inward noticing does not separate from others. It can deepen awareness of shared experience. Within this shared experience, there is room for individuality without distance. Each person carries a distinct inner life, shaped by moments, impressions, and memories that remain largely unspoken. These inner lives do not need to intersect completely to be connected. They can remain parallel, aware of one another without merging. This perspective can ease the tendency to seek confirmation. Confirmation often arises from the wish to stabilize uncertainty. Yet uncertainty itself can be steady when it is allowed. It does not have to be resolved to feel held. It can exist as a quiet openness rather than a lack. As attention remains gentle, the sense of time can soften. Moments feel less segmented. Experience feels continuous rather than divided into past and future. Thoughts may still reference memory, but they do not pull awareness away from the present. They pass through like reflections, leaving the surface unchanged. In this continuity, emotional tones may shift subtly. A sense of calm may deepen, not because something has been settled, but because nothing is being resisted. Calm here is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of pressure around feeling. Emotions can move freely without being directed. There is also a quiet dignity in allowing others their internal spaces. This allowance does not reduce closeness. It honors it. Recognizing that another person's inner world is their own can foster a sense of respect that feels stabilizing rather than distant. Respect creates room where connection can breathe. Awareness may notice how easily assumptions arise, and how easily they can dissolve when not followed. Assumptions often seek to fill gaps in understanding. Yet gaps themselves can be spacious rather than empty. They can hold possibility without needing to define it. In this spaciousness, curiosity may appear in a softened form. It does not lean forward. It does not ask for answers. It simply observes. This kind of curiosity does not disturb balance. It adds a layer of interest without pulling attention away from calm. As reflection continues, the sense of connection remains present, but it does not dominate awareness. It exists alongside other experiences, integrated rather than isolated. This integration makes it feel natural, part of the texture of daily awareness rather than a focal point. There can be comfort in recognizing that understanding often unfolds without deliberate effort. It emerges through familiarity, through repeated presence, through quiet observation. It does not arrive as a moment of clarity. It develops gradually, almost unnoticed. This gradual unfolding does not require acknowledgement to continue. It is not dependent on dialogue or recognition. It exists as part of shared existence, subtle and steady. This steadiness can feel grounding, not because it assures anything, but because it does not demand anything. As attention rests here, the mind may notice a reduced need to label experience. Labels can be useful, but they are not always necessary. Without them, experience feels less confined. It moves freely, uncontained by definitions. In this uncontained space, balance feels less like control and more like allowance. Allowance does not mean passivity. It means openness to what is already present. This openness can feel supportive, as though experience is being met rather than managed. The idea of a quiet inner dimension carried by another can feel less mysterious and more familiar. It mirrors one's own experience of holding thoughts and feelings privately. This mirroring does not require exchange. It simply acknowledges common ground. Common ground does not erase difference. It coexists with it. Each person remains distinct, shaped by unique impressions. Yet beneath these distinctions, there is a shared rhythm of inner movement. Recognizing this rhythm can foster a sense of connection that is gentle rather than intense. There may be moments when awareness drifts, when thoughts wander. This wandering does not interrupt reflection. It is part of it. Attention can return naturally without being directed. The present moment remains available without effort. In this availability, rest becomes more apparent. Rest here is not inactivity. It is the feeling of not needing to adjust experience. It is the ease of allowing thoughts, feelings, and sensations to arise and settle without interference. This ease can extend to how connection is perceived. It becomes less about interaction and more about coexistence. Less about expression and more about presence. This shift does not reduce depth. It changes how depth is felt. As reflection deepens, the mind may notice how silence holds nuance. Silence is not empty. It contains impressions, moods, and understandings that do not require articulation. In connection, silence can feel shared even when experienced individually. This shared quality does not need to be acknowledged to be real. It exists quietly, like a background tone that supports awareness without drawing attention. This tone does not fluctuate dramatically. It remains steady, offering a sense of continuity. Continuity does not imply permanence. It simply reflects the ongoing nature of experience. Moments arise, pass, and give way to others. Awareness remains, adapting without effort. Connection, as part of this awareness, moves gently within it. There is space here for kindness toward oneself. Kindness does not need to be expressed as action. It can exist as a lack of harshness, a softening of inner dialogue. This softening can make reflection feel more spacious. This spaciousness can also support patience in a quiet way. Patience is not waiting for change. It is comfort with what is present. It is the absence of urgency. In this absence, experience feels less pressured, more open. As the mind rests in this openness, it becomes clear that reflection does not need to lead anywhere. It does not need to culminate in insight. It can remain ongoing, fluid, and incomplete. This incompleteness does not feel lacking. It feels alive. The sense of connection remains part of this living experience. It does not move toward resolution. It stays present, integrated into awareness without demanding focus. It can be noticed or not noticed, without changing its nature. In this way, reflection continues without closure. Thoughts may arise, then settle back into quiet. Awareness remains receptive, open to whatever impressions may come next. The narration can remain here, gently unfolding, leaving space for further reflection to emerge later.